going to shift gears into day 2, Monday. It's entitled Jesus Cleanses the Temple. So I think if you're anything like me, sometimes you think super literal. My wife thinks super literal, so she probably thinks of Jesus on his hands and knees with some OxyClean on the temple floor. I know that's not really.
Not the COVID era.
Yes, it's not the COVID era. I know that's not really what it is, but why don't we kind of explain just the scene and what happened and all that?
It's funny because, we have this phrase like, you got a case of the Mondays. Maybe Jesus had a case of the Mondays. I don't know because, he's riding on Sunday and he's like the triumphant king. Everybody's like saying Hosanna. And then something interesting happens. He obviously like cleanses the temple, but on his way to the temple, Jesus sees a fig tree. And we'll get back to that in another day, but he actually, on his way to the temple where he's going to do some house cleaning, he curses this barren fig tree. And the disciples just kind of tuck that in the back of their minds. They're like, that was weird. And then he actually goes to curse some barren fig trees in the flesh.
That's good.
Because there's a lot of fruitlessness that's happening in the temple. And so he's walking in the temple, and we know this story, right? There's like the money changers, and there's some people being taken advantage of because they have to travel all this great distance to make sacrifices. And you can't travel all those miles and all that terrain with animals to sacrifice. And so they have to purchase these animals, and they're being sold animals that are defected, animals that are, not really what they would deem to be sacrificial animals, and paying absorbent amounts of money for them. And Jesus is like, this is not what it's all about. Right. And I think that's why he gets a little indignant. That's why he clears, because his house will be called what? A house of prayers. That's and right. They had made it a den of robbers.
That's right.
And so, this is interesting because it's kind of where we see like, so much of Jesus' life is like, man, he's healing the sick, but now Jesus gets a little ticked, and it's like this last life is like, man, Jesus, you almost made it, and then the last week of your life, it's like, oh man,
it turned into a gangster.
he went a little Incredible Hulk here, but it's just pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think this is probably the most baller move of all time, and Jesus is filled with this like holy fury. He's like, you're doing it wrong, and then I think a lot of times we can want all the things that look good on the outside and to be, religious, and we want all these things, but we don't want Jesus. We don't want the conviction. We don't want him to hold the standard. And he comes in and he's like, you guys have it backwards. And I love this story. It's like, you can kind of relate to him. Like, we get a little mad sometimes. Jesus is flipping tables. It's like, man, he really made his presence known there. But I love this. It's so good.
Yeah. That's awesome. Man, it's such a weird day and kind of dynamic because you have, I think, not only what happens on the day of, but even fitting into the rest of the week. So you have essentially what's a big party and celebration on Sunday, and then you have this like reckoning on Tuesday. And it feels very much like the beginning of Jesus saying, no, like I want to clarify to connect it to the whole week. Last year you guys celebrated me, but you're celebrating me politically. I want to clarify what I came to do, which is to bring purity, which is to bring hope, which is to bring life, which is to bring connection to my Father. And I'm not going to be used for your agenda. I'm not going to be used for what. And man, that even convicts me today. How often do I use Jesus to fulfill my agenda? Wow. How often do I use Jesus, even for us that are in ministry? And like, one of my favorite songs by a guy named John Mark McMillan, you may or may not have heard, there's a line in the song that says, are we mercenaries or lovers? Wow. Do we love Jesus, or are we in it for what we get out of it? Wow. And so is our love for Jesus contingent on, well, if I get the blessing, if I'm in the community, if I'm all this stuff. And I think what God is calling us to is a place where we're worshiping in spirit and in truth, not a transactional worship, but this place where Jesus says, hey, I've come to get close. To me, here's one of the things I think I've always kind of asked myself is, so Jesus cleanses the temple, but he's about to make the temple obsolete anyway.
Right.
Wow.
And so he does it literally to make a point that he knows 6 days from now isn't even going to matter. Like the temple is great and to be revered and to be respected, but he's about to become the temple. He's about to bring people close and into his relationship with him. And so good. I just want to think about that, man. It drives me kind of insane to think about. What was he thinking and what was his motive about that?
That's so good. Curtis, you had mentioned about the fig tree, and this is kind of nerd alert for me, but I was looking into this. And so fig trees in Jerusalem, they don't go into full leaf until they actually have fruit. And so it was almost as a way they were promoting, hey, we have fruit. And so that's why Jesus even walked over there And so when he doesn't discover fruit, like you said, he's going in the temple to do the exact same thing that he did to that tree, to say, hey, don't promote that you've got something. You've got this relationship with God that you just don't have.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why he was so confrontational with the religious.
That's good. That's good. Yeah.